Something that annoys me is environmental problems. They are kind of a nuisance, right? They are set to displace millions of people out of their homes, to cause extreme poverty, and ultimately they will end the human race on the planet. They will end life sustainable. Well, and we hear about this a lot, the climate crisis. We have actions being taken. I call it actions. It's not like measures. Okay, some measures were taken, but for example, I remember growing up in the 80s and gasoline changing to from leaded to unleaded, and more recently diesel has all these kinds of additives that you put to it, so and cars are equipped with filters so it doesn't pollute that much. You have all these inventions, right? They have one thing in common, is that whatever you do for the climate, economy cannot stop. Economic activity cannot stop within the model we are living in. Nevertheless, we get this COP meetings. I don't know how many we had of them, 26, 27, 28, I don't recall exactly. where you gather surprisingly or not surprisingly, you gather the oil bosses of the world to discuss climate. And I think it was in one of these meetings, maybe it was in the last one, that it was said that oil, it's impossible to phase out oil. And I do agree with this. And it's interesting that this is spoken at the summit for the environment, right? It's funny. It's like you gather all the wolves to discuss the lives of the sheep. And a lot of countries, for example, the European Union takes very seriously the carbon emissions, the nitrogen emissions. And I look at all this and I find something is not adding up, right? Something, because despite all the talks and all the new the new rules about the way things should be done not to harm the planet, I mean, they are measures, and these ones I call it measures because they are implemented, for example, on the farmers, on livestock creation. And again, you are imposing restrictions on farming and livestock. I mean, they are the basis of the nourishment of the society. I mean, you have to eat. It's basic as that. You are privatizing, you are making huge money on water. These restrictions on food would only make the price increase. They don't seem to solve anything. And everything goes pretty much business as usual. You have the financial markets doing their thing, Do they help the planet? I don't think so. They cause poverty, most of all. Above all, they cause inflation and poverty. The financial system is responsible, and the rules they apply are responsible for the income inequality, which is responsible for extreme poverty. And you go see, for example, in one of those poor neighborhoods of any country, if people there are worried about the environment. Look at the way they have their streets, they take care of their garbage. I mean, look at that. If you have poverty, you have lack of access to basic things, material things, and also non-material things like good education. How can you solve the environment? How can you do that, right? I mean, of course, if you have a society where not even your sewer system or your recycling system or it's developed, how are you going to clean? How are you going to maintain it clean? If the people don't have those habits because they are simply not taught, they have to live with what they have. They are subjected to slavery, working in the mines. This is one aspect, right? How do you expect to solve climate if you don't solve people's problems? So they can then worry about saving climate, right? This is one aspect. Of course, there's much more to be said about this. But you know, I'm driving, I'm in my car, I cannot pull out any documents or news. I have to talk it out of memory. You get the general idea, I hope. So this is one aspect. If you have to take care of the people in order to then take care of the spaces where you live in, including, of course, and more environmental sensitive places, which are often places where humans don't live in. For example, like the rainforest. But as long as you have poor people with low access to everything, I mean, if you pay them good money to go and chop down those trees, they will go chop down those trees. Simple as that. So that is one incentive. The other incentive, when you speak, for example, talking about Europe, it's you have a rather organized, functioning societies. I mean, you have also poverty, but it's, for example, especially in Northern Europe, Central and Northern Europe, it's rather nice there. It seems that they manage to, at least is in the places where people live, in like the Netherlands and Belgium, they manage to find more or less of an equilibrium between the clean air, the environment, and the production activities. But nevertheless, there is an oil and gas industry, there is a chemical industry, there is an intensive agriculture industry, and there is, above all, a huge service industry. This is the industry, I think, it's the kind of industry that we seldom look at. And I'll get to my point very, very shortly. You have a lot of jobs in this society that are not needed. Okay? They're simply not needed. Or, let me put it this way, even in the jobs that are needed, so I think this is a better example. Even in the jobs that are needed, why do people go 5, 6, 7 days a week to work? Why? Can you tell me why? If productivity due to technology and better organization I won't say better management, because nowadays big companies have a weird way of management. What they call efficient management is just extracting from the poor to the rich. But organization, the way things are organized. Why do I have to still put in almost 40 hours of work every week? The answer is simple: you don't. And it's the financial system who keeps putting a stress on the economy in order to create scarcity. I'm not saying anything new here, right? I will refer to, for example, there are many authors writing about this, but I refer to a man who studied them a lot and made a great job in making a documentary back in 2010, if I'm not mistaken. His name is Peter Joseph. So this financial system ultimately creates artificial scarcity, and this artificial scarcity makes us seem like the more hours we work are never not enough. We have to work more and more, and if we cannot work more, we have to work better and better and better and faster and faster and faster, right? We have to increase our rhythm, and we cannot lose time in our lives with, having fun and fucking around. And I started the video with the environment, and this is where I will go to, because remember COVID, when all economy stopped? Well, not all economy. This is the good point here, is it's not all economy. The essential economy, you remember the essential workers, they kept running. I kept running. My work was considered an essential one, the place where I work. I kept running, so and many others kept running. People had to eat. They had to have electricity in their homes, right? They still needed to buy their things, their clothes and their items, and none of that was lacking. All of that was still available. But the air in the cities was suddenly much cleaner. You had the wildlife returning to the cities. So you had, I don't know the numbers, but I estimate a huge reduction in pollution. At least in the cities, which are responsible for most of the pollution. And so here you have and then you ask yourself, if we could go by without things working as they were, why do we still do it? Because the thing is, the example I'm going to give is, if you could make a family rich, or if you could make rich people when you had the technology that to harvest a field you needed hundreds of people, depending on the hundreds depending on the size of the field, but you needed the front line of people to harvest, for example, wheat. And suddenly a machine comes along, and one machine does more than the double, the triple, and multiplied manifold the work of these hundreds of people. One machine, one person. Where did all that productivity go to? Why do the people still have to go and find 8 hours, 12 hours, 16 hours, 2 jobs? And of course, if they have to go and do that and still cannot make ends meet, they have to go around. They cannot stop. They have to keep being in transportations, keep using their phones, keep using their computers, keep using their brains. they have to keep pulling this heavy machine, which at the end of the year, when you make the accounting on, for example, the internal the GDP, oh, GDP is rising, good thing, right? All of this is GDP. All of that, what we do reflects on the GDP. I'm going to work right now. I'm burning diesel. I have to buy this diesel. I'm burning my tires. I have to buy new tires eventually. I have to make maintenance in my car, spare parts. Eventually I have to buy a new car sooner because I have to use it to go to work. And so whenever we talk about pollution, we never question the economic model we live under. It's like a god. It's unquestionable. And you can have different economic models, not even that. I mean, you could at least, okay, maybe we should work this some other way, right? But no, we seem to want to go back, right? We seem to want to go back to feudalism. Everybody has to be kind of a slave, and then you have few landlords, few masters who get it all. And people can just barely live, and they have to resign and to this. But yeah, it's a row of cars behind me, a row of cars in front of me. Although this is not a city, this is rather. It's I go to a small city. It's mostly fields around, but there is no transportation, public transportation, so people have to use their cars. You see, this kind of things are never talked when they tell us the urgency of the climate crisis. Why don't you want to change the world? The world in the sense that you have to radically change the economy. We produce. This is the bottom line. The productivity of the economies nowadays are more. They are a lot of times multiplying, a lot of times, thousands of times more productive. And they are more than enough to feed us, to clothe us, to give us the things we need in order to liberate us. That was the meaning of technology. You remember this talk? Robots will replace humans so that humans can be humans, right? They can then tend to the environment. They can then tend to the problems of society. They can then become creative, inventive, innovative without being under stress. It's we are living in a very absurd world, and this culture of I'm not gonna say working culture, or I'm gonna say culture of lying. It's a culture of lying. We are lying. We are being lied to, and we are lying to ourselves. We convince ourselves that this is much needed, and then sometimes when we convince ourselves, we are actually in a kind of way right, because we don't know any better. If I don't go to work, I don't get my paycheck, I don't get to live. Simple as that. But if you think about it, there's no need for any of this shit anymore. And then people go to work the whole week, they put a lot of hours to get their paychecks, then they need to go and let the steam off. Families go under huge stress. Crimes get committed. Medicine, antidepressants get sold. And many other things. Good for the economy. So it's actually the economy is working against the people. It's working only for the sake of itself, against of the majority, and ultimately against the environment. I really hope I see you on the next one.